Ah, a brand new fighter class. And yes, fighter is a class you can dress in multiple ways, which is what we're going to talk about today. Whether you enjoy PDR and shield fighter, or the high speed, high mobility Slayer fighter with dual wield, chewing through your enemies with action speed and damage. And no, unfortunately, I'm not going to be talking about shield slamming exclusively. My plan is to talk to you guys about the three main ways I can see you guys having success with fighter class. That is Slayer, PDR or shield fighter, and two-handed weapon style or longsword, spear, halberd fighter. So we'll get into the pros and cons in those. I just wanted to sneak in a little shield slam tip, because I don't really plan to talk about skills and perks exclusively, because things are going to change a lot. And since Playtest 3, when I first started really playing fighter class, and Playtest 4, where I found my love for Slayer fighter, it has also changed a lot, and that's what we're going to talk about first. Slayer fighter often feels like an assassin in the dark at times, giving you high mobility and high weapon damage. Something that a lot of people think that Rogue should have. So Slayer fighter's pros are speed, weapon damage, and the dexterity with those damage numbers, on top of having a range option. Just a disclaimer here, range is always an option no matter what playstyle you play on fighter class. You can always run crossbow, or you can take weapon mastery and run any bow you want or any weapon you want. However, Slayer fighter plays a lot like a ranger, and if you look at the cons, I've added PDR, no ability to block, and no real ability to support a team in trios other than just dealing insane damage. So it kind of leaves Slayer fighter feeling lackluster in trios. And like I mentioned, you are pretty much playing a ranger with insane melee damage. So if you're 1v1ing against really good range players, you should probably be losing those traits. If they're doing quick shot, have better action speed with their bows, you're likely going to lose. You don't have any projectile resistance or plate on. Your PDR is not like the other builds we're going to talk about. However, that speed on Slayer Fighter allows you to pick and choose when you want to fight. And, admittedly, this guy needed to hit more shots because he chose poorly. You can get yourself in really bad melee situations, Slayer Fighter against Barbarians and other classes, PDR Fighter for example. Your HP pool isn't that large and it's kind of expensive to build a ton of vigor, which basically stacks all your HP up. So, it's a risky playstyle, but often was one of my favorites for so long, until Savage Roar and some of these other things existed, which you will learn of as you play. So, the best way to play Slayer Fighter is just kite with your range options, which have been nerfed a little lately. However, I still feel like it's the best way. Either pick them apart with a recurve bow if you have decent action speed built onto your character, maybe a longbow. You can run crossbow, but with crossbow, the window of opportunity, like right here, this moment, would have been a lot more touch and go, because I would not have been able to get out of there quite as quickly and put that crossbow away. And this is what you pretty much need to do. You whittle them down, try not to take melee damage, and then get in there and start mixing it up when you know you have them in a rough spot. You can dodge in and out of combat quite a bit with this playstyle. Movement speed has been changed a lot, and also sprint is just incredible. Even if it's nerfed a little going forward, sprint will still be really strong. Essentially, this whole fight is me just playing around his debuff, which reduces my physical attack damage by 40%, which is Savage Roar. Like I said, some of these things may change, but you really need to be careful of the timing of when you want to pick your moment. And now that we've softened this guy up quite a bit with a recurve bow, we're getting to that point where we just need to maybe send this and start dealing some damage. And that combination is always going to be one of my favorites. Armor sword, short sword. Falchion's another great option. Just use whatever you think is fun. It's not that complicated. One thing I will say, hand crossy falchion is something people have been doing for a little bit of armor pen through the hand crossbow or whatnot. I used to really enjoy doing this. I don't anymore, because even with max move speed, you're going to have a hard time catching those rangers to melee them with your weapons out. So, yeah, you're going to need to be quick. Make the most of all your range options. One thing I will say quickly is the whole point of Slayer Fighter is getting in there with melee against soft targets. Whether you soften them up with your bow or they're just soft by nature. Something that isn't soft and not for soft people, two-handed weapon fighter. This includes spear, halberd, battle axe, longsword. I may be forgetting others. You can literally use all of them in the game, Bardiche, all those ones if you take weapon mastery. However, Yes, the base damage is really high, the reach, on-hit slow, all those things are great. You have limited block options and really, really slow swing and move speed penalties. So, Spear has always been one of my favorite, and this is kind of why. It's 20% on-hit slow. You can do a lot of neat things with Spear, and during multi-classing it was actually everywhere, because Spear Mastery existed. People could use it on every class all of a sudden, and realize, damn, Spear is actually a lot of fun. It is difficult. It's a minus 40 movement speed penalty. A lot of these weapons are going to be risky because you're just leaving yourself completely open. Spear does have a block, but it's not really a block to fight with. It's more of a block to get yourself out of bad situations, if you can. Replying after a block is very difficult with Spear, or any of the other two-handed weapons. Longsword maybe being the exception. Halberd, as you can see, has a sweeping attack rather than a block, and very good range and solid, like, I mean, probably the highest damage numbers in the game for base damage on a weapon. It did just get recently buffed to minus 40 movement speed, which is good, but not quite as good as minus 30 speed that the longsword offers. Longsword's its own unique thing. I really recommend guys like Augustin, Tsukisai, Sparkakawa if you want to learn a lot about parry riposte, how to train against mobs and PvE. The riposte damage is absolutely absurd, so you can clear rooms and do stuff that other weapons in this game just cannot do, on top of having really, really awesome melee fights. There is a new Lantern Shield. I have a video on that if you want to check it out. Lantern Shield has similar options, but it is a shield, obviously. So, Longsword's a unique one. It's a very, very fashionable, it's a very sexy weapon. Everyone wants to be a Longsword gamer. I truthfully think Longsword and Fighter at the moment is a little strong with the move speed and second wind and sprint and all those things happening. Like I said, I don't want to get too into that. Things could change completely. Thank you for Fortnite Kid for providing this great content as I randomly spectated him in the game. So lastly, we now have Plate Fighter. In my opinion, Plate Fighter is literally one of the most frustrating ways to play Fighter, as you'll probably witness here. I apologize if the audio is a little scuffed in this one, but yeah. There are times where I feel like Plate Fighter is just a crossbow turret. It is probably the best way to play in trios. You have a really, really insane physical damage resistance, around like 70%, depending on some of your bonuses and what perks you're taking and stuff. Pretty sure, I can't remember what the cap is, I'm not the wiki guy. But you also have the ability to block, which is huge against a lot of the ranged projectiles, against wizard spells, against a whole host of things. If you're using Heater Shield, it is pretty wild what you can do with blocking, especially against mobs and some other stuff. That being said, blocking is difficult. Spacing is hugely important. Impact power, resist power are crucial stats to understand, which I recommend Ryan 6 days a week if you want to learn more about that. But the cons, you're super slow, as you're witnessing here. Super slow, and you have a tough time building magic resist with physical damage resist. You kind of have to pick one or the other. And then, if you pick wrong, depending on your engagement that you're trying to encounter, in solos, you're basically like flipping a coin whether you're going to die to the wizard when you build a crazy PDR, physical damage resist kit, or if you take magic resist, you're probably going to run into barbarians repeatedly and then, or die to rangers because you have no physical damage reduction. It's a tough thing to do. In trios, you can kind of work around it a little better. You have other options. In solos, it's either all or nothing, I feel. And truthfully, I just give up sometimes. Like, I mean, in this situation here, I could never catch this guy. There's no way in the world I should have been fighting him. But, yeah, sometimes you have to pick your battles when you're playing PDR Fighter. You really do. You have to hit your crossbow shots. Most people run crossbow, and it's not easy. You may think I just absolutely hate PDR Fighter, and you're probably right. I've never really enjoyed playing Plate Fighter. There's been a few moments recently over the past month where I've just found, like, a few good things happening with Shield solo, but it's kind of rare. I just prefer, if I'm going to do any sort of Shield fighter, I'm going to be doing that in trios. Or I'm going to be doing it in solos with Shield Slam, which is kind of a little bit of a joke, if I'm honest. Unless something magical happens tomorrow, who knows? It can be a lot of fun, but generally speaking, I often found myself just never catching anybody, and then dying to a wizard, or whatnot. Warlock, also very, very strong. Now this is when multi-classing was happening. I was testing out some oddball stuff, and I did get into a good engagement against a spear user. Like I said, everyone was using spear at this time. I was messing around with this like oddball fighter stuff just to get ready for the next wipe. That guy should not be roaring and use a spear. You will not see that. However, it was possible at one time. And this is what shield can do. If you have counterattack on, you can reply like right there, so snappy. Because you have defense mastery and counterattack working in your favor. It can be a huge game changer if you're good at it, if you can space properly, if you can get your block in the right position at the right time. There's a lot going into it. Shield Slam does block, but it's not really something a lot of players are going to be using. Currently, a lot of players are just using Shield to basically improve their PDR numbers, to push them into thresholds that really start to add up. And shields do provide armor rating. So that's a lot of times some people will use shield and not even really intend to block too much other than focus on blocking ranged projectiles. Blocking in melee can be difficult. Yes, at one time I did test perfect block, which, like I mentioned, this is when impact resistance becomes important. But basically, without perfect block happening here, I would get full staggered. And you'll know it when it happens. If you ever get full staggered by a heavy barbarian weapon, it is not a good feeling. Your shield goes flying back, it's like a second and a half before you can reply, and then you usually lose the fight. I think that pretty much sums up everything I want to discuss across the board. Basically just give you guys like a little bit of just a feeling out process of, well, what do I really want to play when I click on fighter class? There's a lot of options. I really recommend sticking to these three. If you're in trios, Plate Fighter is probably amazing. Solos, Slayer Fighter is a lot of fun. It's just fun to be that fast. And then two-handed weapons, I hope to see some changes to them which make them better. There have been minor adjustments already, and who knows, they could be incredible. Thank you all very much. Please subscribe to the channel. I will see you guys all next time, either live on Twitch or live on YouTube videos, whatever it may be. Cheers.